The Buffalo Bills made a statement in Week 2. Their 30-10 victory over the New York Jets wasn't just a win, it was a message to the rest of the league. At first, it might have looked like just another solid performance. But when you see how other teams around the NFL struggled this past weekend, that Bills win suddenly carries even more weight. Before we dive deeper into this latest Bills breakdown, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the newest updates. Let's move on to the fresh news. Now, let's talk about why that dominant showing looks even better in hindsight. The defensive line took a huge step forward, and the edge rushers in particular completely changed the tone of the game. Joey Bosa was a monster, 2 forced fumbles, a sack, and 6 total pressures in just 26 snaps. That kind of efficiency is absurd. But it wasn't just him. The Bills leaned on a rotation of Bosa, A.J. Epineza, and Greg Rousseau, and all three delivered. Epineza's impact went beyond the box score, his pressure and run-stopping presence clogged up lanes and disrupted everything the Jets tried on the ground. And Rousseau? He gave their offensive line fits, picking up a sack and generating constant pressure. What makes this even more impressive is who they were up against. The Jets had looked strong in Week 1 against a tough Steelers defense, proving that this wasn't just a weak opponent, it was the Bills' defense elevating their game and imposing their will. What stood out most in Week 2 wasn't just the scoreboard, it was the way the Buffalo Bills completely took over the trenches. From start to finish, it looked like the Bills were the ones dictating the push on both sides of the ball. The Jets' offensive line, which had looked sharp the week before, got manhandled. Buffalo wasn't just winning battles, they were bullying the line of scrimmage. And it wasn't all about the edge rushers. The interior defensive line deserves its own spotlight. With Ed Oliver sidelined due to that ankle injury, the responsibility fell squarely on the shoulders of Daquan Jones. He stepped into that role and delivered, anchoring the defense in the middle against an opponent that wanted to establish the run early. His presence set the tone. But Jones wasn't alone. T.J. Sanders and Deon Walker, both young players still carving out their place, showed that this unit has depth. They filled gaps, shed blocks, and clogged lanes in ways you don't often see from inexperienced defensive linemen. Their performance gave Buffalo flexibility, allowing the edge rushers to pin their ears back and attack the quarterback. The impressive part is that the Bills pulled this off without being at full strength. Think about it, Oliver was unavailable, and 2 key additions, Michael Hocht and Larry Ogunjobi, haven't even suited up yet because of suspensions. Once they return in Week 6, this defensive line rotation could transform from good to dominant. Adding seasoned veterans to a group of young players who are already gaining valuable reps is a recipe for a scary front four. It's also worth remembering how different this looked compared to Week 1. The run defense was shaky against Pittsburgh, raising early concerns. But in Week 2, Buffalo slammed the door on those doubts. Every time the Jets tried to get something going on the ground, it was stuffed, slowed, or redirected into traffic. And when the Jets were forced into passing downs, the rush collapsed the pocket and forced hurried decisions. That's the kind of turnaround you want to see this early in the season. A unit learning from mistakes, adjusting quickly, and proving that even without key starters, they can take control of a game. If this is what the Bills' defensive line looks like short-handed, just imagine what it will be when everyone is back on the field. One of the most encouraging signs for the Bills' defense in Week 2 wasn't just the raw dominance, it was the coaching adjustments that made it possible. Defensive coordinator Bobby Babich deserves credit for recognizing the Jets' tendencies and reshaping the rotation to match. This wasn't just lining up and winning battles, it was strategy, execution, and adaptability all coming together. Take the interior rotation, for example. Instead of sticking with the same plan from Week 1, the Bills shifted roles. Deon Walker, a bigger body more suited to handle a run-heavy opponent, logged more snaps than T.J. Sanders. With Ed Oliver out, Babich couldn't risk leaning on a pure pass rusher like Sanders to anchor the middle. So the call was made, Walker and Daquan Jones lined up together inside, creating a wall that clogged rushing lanes and forced the Jets to abandon their preferred game plan. This wasn't a knock on Sanders, far from it. Once the Jets were pushed into passing downs, Sanders came in and flashed his upside. After a quiet opener in Week 1, he showed growth, collapsing the pocket and proving he can be more than just a rotational piece. That's exactly the kind of progression Buffalo needs from its young talent as the season builds. The Bills also showed a willingness to mix up their alignments, something that's been less common in past years. Typically, Buffalo favors an over front, stacking the 3 technique and both edge rushers toward the strong side, with the 1 tech left to hold the weak side. But against New York, Babbage flipped the script, sprinkling in under looks that shifted the 1 tech to the strong side while sliding the rest of the line toward the weak side. Why does that matter? Because it disrupted the Jets' blocking schemes. The offensive line was expecting one look and got another, forcing them to adjust on the fly. That unpredictability kept the Jets off balance and highlighted a defense that's not just playing with talent, but with creativity. What we're seeing here is the foundation of something bigger. When a coaching staff can tailor its scheme to fit both the opponent and the personnel available, it sets the stage for long-term success. The Bills didn't just survive without Ed Oliver, they thrived by finding the right mix of players and alignments. And when this unit gets back to full strength, with Oliver returning and veteran reinforcements joining later in the season, the possibilities are wide open. What makes this all the more exciting is that the Bills are willing to experiment early in the season. That's exactly what you want to see from a team with so much young talent on the defensive line. When you don't yet know the full ceiling of your players, the smartest move is to test combinations, try new alignments, and see who rises to the challenge. In Week 2, we saw enough to believe this defensive front is building something real. And while there were plenty of solid contributions across the board, the name that keeps coming up is Joey Bosa. His disruptive presence gives this line an edge that opponents must game plan around. Pair him with the emerging depth pieces inside, and suddenly the Bills look far more balanced than they did just a week earlier. So here's the real question, what's your confidence level in this group right now? Was the performance against the Jets a glimpse of what's to come, or just a one-week flash? Some might say the Jets' offensive line wasn't the toughest test, but others see a defensive front that is only scratching the surface. If this was only the second game of the season, imagine where this unit could be by mid-year. But let's take a step back, because the truth is, the Bills' win over the Jets doesn't exist in a vacuum. When you look around the rest of the NFL and see what other teams struggled with in Week 2, Buffalo's performance stands out even more. The dominance in the trenches, the adaptability on defense, and the ability to adjust without key starters, it all makes the victory shine brighter in comparison. And that's where things get even more interesting. The ripple effects across the league show just how impressive Buffalo's win really was. Here's the thing about Buffalo's win over the Jets, it looks even more impressive when you scan the rest of the league. Across Week 2, plenty of teams stumbled, plenty of supposed contenders showed cracks, but the Bills? They took care of business in dominant fashion. That's the mark of a team separating itself from the pack. Now, let's take a peek at what's ahead. Buffalo's upcoming schedule lines up favorably. Over the next 8 opponents, the combined record sits at just 2-12, a sign that the Bills have a real chance to stack wins early. This is where good teams turn momentum into a streak, and where playoff runs are built long before December. It starts with the Miami Dolphins on a short week. Miami looks like a franchise on the ropes, disconnected, disorganized, and on the verge of collapse. Reports already swirl about coaching turmoil, and the energy from that locker room doesn't exactly scream fight. When you put a wounded team on the same field as a Buffalo roster that smells blood, the outcome feels inevitable. The Bills have the tools to put this one away early, and if they play the way they did against New York, don't be surprised if this turns into a blowout. From there, the road doesn't get much tougher. Matchups against struggling squads like the New Orleans Saints loom, and they've shown nothing in the opening weeks to suggest they can slow down Buffalo's momentum. If the Bills maintain focus, it's not unrealistic to imagine them opening the year on a tear, 3-0, 4-0, maybe even beyond. The takeaway is clear, this team isn't just winning, they're winning while still figuring themselves out. And that's a dangerous combination for the rest of the AFC. Because if Buffalo is this sharp now, imagine what they'll look like when reinforcements return, young talent develops, and the scheme grows more flexible each week. The path ahead is laid out, the opponents are vulnerable, and the Bills have an opportunity to make a statement that echoes across the entire league. Looking ahead, the schedule still has its challenges, but the Bills are in position to handle them. Let's start with the New Orleans Saints. Right now, that team looks like it's in full collapse mode, an offense stuck in neutral, a defense that can't close games, and no real identity. They're already trending toward the bottom of the league, possibly even fighting for the top pick in the next draft. For Buffalo, this matchup is simple: stay focused, avoid sloppy play, and don't give an inferior team a reason to hang around. If the Bills somehow lost this one, it wouldn't just be an upset, it would be the definition of a trap. After that comes a divisional showdown with the New England Patriots. Yes, it's a rivalry game, and yes, those matchups are always charged. But the Patriots don't strike fear the way they used to. Their Week 1 loss to the Raiders exposed holes, and their Week 2 win over Miami took everything out of them. This is not the same powerhouse of the past. Rookie quarterback Drake May is still learning, and when you line him up against Josh Allen in a primetime rivalry jersey matchup, the edge belongs to Buffalo every single time. On paper, this feels like the kind of night where the Bills could put their stamp on the AFC East. The Atlanta Falcons, however, are a different story. That's a team with real weapons and a dangerous balance on offense. Unlike the Jets, who rely too heavily on their ground game, Atlanta can actually throw the football, and that makes their rushing attack with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Allgeier even more threatening. Their defense has also shown flashes, throwing complex looks to confuse young quarterbacks. But here's the key: Josh Allen is not a rookie. He's not going to be rattled by disguises or pressure packages the same way other quarterbacks have been. Does that make the Falcons a threat? Absolutely. Any team with their level of offensive firepower can put points on the board in a hurry. But even then, Atlanta has shown inconsistency. One week they look sharp, the next they stumble. For Buffalo, it's about execution. If the Bills stick to their identity and keep control at the line of scrimmage the way they did against New York, this is a game they should be favored to win, even on the road. Bottom line, there are hurdles, but none of these matchups should scare Buffalo if they bring their best football. The path is right there for a statement stretch. The road ahead for Buffalo looks very manageable. Carolina is on the schedule, and let's be honest, the Panthers look lost. They did everything possible to beat Arizona in Week 2 and still couldn't get it done. The Bryce Young experiment feels like it's collapsing quickly, and right now he looks like nothing more than an average quarterback. For Buffalo, this is the kind of game you have to win. But then comes the monster. Kansas City may be 0-2, but don't be fooled by the numbers. The Chiefs are never the team their record shows in September. By the time Buffalo steps into that matchup, they'll be facing the same dangerous powerhouse that has haunted them for the last 5 years. If there's one game that demands Buffalo's absolute best, it's this one. A win over Kansas City would be season-defining. Before we break down what's next, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the latest Buffalo Bills updates. Now, let's get back to the action. After Kansas City, the Bills turn their attention to Miami. At this point in the season, the Dolphins look like a broken team. Their offense has flashes, but the consistency just isn't there. This matchup lines up nicely for Buffalo, especially given how physical their defense has been. And don't forget, the Bills have their bye in Week 7, giving them a chance to recharge before the second half of the season. That makes this stretch critical. Take care of business against Carolina, fight like hell against Kansas City, and handle Miami with discipline. The Bills could come out of this next phase in excellent shape. So here's the big question for Bills Mafia: over these next 7 games, how do you see Buffalo's record shaking out? Looking at the first 10 weeks, the Bills are positioned as one of the NFL's strongest contenders. My projection? Buffalo goes 7-1 over their next stretch, splitting between Atlanta and Kansas City, which would put them at 9-1 heading into Week 11. That's an elite start, and it puts them firmly in the Super Bowl conversation. But there's one matchup later in the season that just got a lot more interesting: Buffalo against Cincinnati. Joe Burrow is set to miss significant time with a turf toe injury that requires surgery. The timeline suggests a possible December return, which lines up almost perfectly with the Bills' clash against the Bengals on December 7th. If Burrow tries to come back for that game, he'll be fresh off rehab and far from 100%. That scenario tilts things heavily in Buffalo's favor. Even a healthy Burrow has his hands full with this Bills defense, but a recovering Burrow? Advantage Buffalo. When you zoom out, the schedule is falling nicely for Buffalo. The Chiefs will be their biggest test. The Dolphins look vulnerable. The Bengals could be without their star quarterback. And by the time December rolls around, the Bills might be in full control of the AFC playoff race. The foundation has been laid, and the path is there. The question is simple: can Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills finally seize it? So, Bills Mafia, what's your prediction? How many wins do you see Buffalo stacking by the time December arrives?